Invest Africa, proudly brought to you by KPMG.
Last week, South Africa's Minister of Women's Affairs, that's Susan Shabangu, officially launched Women's Month, saying that it is important that women's achievements, such as being judges, directors or publishers in companies and those in male-dominated environments, should not be denied. Hello and welcome to Invest Africa. I'm Dumisho Greater. Joining me today to look at the role of women in Africa's economy is Dr. Renate Volpe. She's the Chief Executive at Volpe Leadership Consulting. And coming to us from Lagos is Renate James, Partner at Tax, Regulatory and People Services at KPMG. Ladies, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Nike, let me come to you right there in Lagos and look at it from a continental perspective. In your opinion, we have seen governments, we have seen institutions carefully crafting these policies that are aimed to empower women. Has this translated into real representation and power of women on the continent?
Okay, thank you very much, Tanisha. And you're quite right that in recent times, many governments in Africa have tried to institute programs which has helped to improve women's participation in what I call the formal sector, which is from a social, political, and economic environment. I must say that even as we have it today, the participation of women is still significantly far below that of men, but we are beginning to see records of significant progress. Take a country like Rwanda, and when you take in terms of their legislative process, you have almost up to 70% of people in the legislative system constituting women. And the story doesn't end there. You go around, you look at South Africa, you see significant improvement. If I come home back to Nigeria as well, we begin to see women play much more leadership role. In the immediate past regime that we had a lot of women who are not only in the legislative process, but who are also being elected as ministers and who actually performed exceedingly well. I take a look at the private sector as well, and I see some of the statistics that have been prepared by like a WIMBIS, which is a women association in Nigeria, and they show a gradual, it's slow, but there's a continuous growth in terms of the participation of women. For instance, in board level positions, a few years back, the participation of women were less than 10%, but today we find it rising to up to 20% of board members representing women. So yes, government policies and government help has been helping to increase the profile of women and actually to improve on gender diversity, but there's a lot that still needs to be done because we are not yet near having a gender equality by any measure.
Annika, let's stop you there and come to Renate, who's in studios with us right here in Johannesburg. Renate, from a corporate level in South African business, are we seeing this trend of getting women on top lagging behind, or are we making progress?
The progress is extraordinarily poor, unfortunately. The BWA, the Business Women's Association, recently launched a census. And if one goes onto their website, one will actually see the exact figures that the progress is very, very difficult and very, very slow. And my particular contribution to that is that in terms of women in business, they lack 5 particular competencies which differentiate them from the male, and the playing ground is very masculine at the moment. And women are not comfortable with corporate politics, they're not comfortable with negotiation, they're networking, they see networking as a new best friend very often rather than males who see it as a transaction. Their brand is not something that comes natural, they buy into the humility. And very often women do not think as strategically, but these things can be taught. And we've just finished our 50th course in terms of developing senior women leaders. And what happens after they're taught those 5 skills is they make a huge quantum leap in their careers. So it's not a case of women not being able to, but predominantly it is a case of women not understanding the difference between a job, which is about competence, and they believe that if they just do well and work harder, that they will receive attention and receive a promotion, whereas it's not. It's about those 5 competencies that I've mentioned that make the difference between a career, which is a desire, a passion, and a focus on making a difference.
Nike, let's come to you. We just heard what Renate had to say, talking about women sometimes maybe being a bit more apologetic about their position. Are we seeing this as one of the reasons why we see women tend to disappear and not own the role that they're in?
You know, to me, as we talk about that and I think about it, you know, women have a lot of issues that actually impact on their performance and being able to play more of a leadership role. There are issues that are from the informal cultural perspective in terms of even our views of what women should be doing and the kind of support they receive from a cultural environment that enables them to go forward and do what we expect of them. And there's also the part that when women indeed go into formal environments like the workplace, what are the expectations there? Most of the work environments we have today, they are male dominated. While women have done a lot of good in terms of their involvement in professional roles, but their transition from professional roles to leadership roles have been very, very slow. And you know, for us to address that issue, we really need to have some frank conversations regarding what are those issues that limit women, even when they get into the formal sector, from actually rising up right to the leadership role. And there are many. A few of them is business diversity issues, gender stereotype. There's still a leading issue in terms of our concept of who a leader is. People tend to take them as people who are logical, for instance, who are very rational, who are numerates. These are the hard skills people are looking for, and it favors a lot of men. When on the other hand tends to be more of nurturing, more of caring, and people feel, ooh, that really doesn't give you, you know, that doesn't really make you a tough decision maker. So you find those stereotypes actually limits women. And even when you find women who don't fit into those stereotypes, they have a stronger hurdle to cross in convincing men folk that they are actually ripe and fit for the job. So overall, you find that women have a stronger impediment to their growth, even in formal sectors, than you have the men do. And that doesn't even stop there. You also talk about strategic relationship building. You know, men have an age-long advantage of mateship. Men know how to bond together. Men know how to relate together. They have networking and alliances, opportunities that bring them together. But you know, women are not culturally fit for this kind of agenda. So you don't
Nike,
find
I'm going to stop you there because I really want to get Renate's take on this. She's talking about the different cultural differences and how women handle different situations. Would you say that there is a different way in which women tackle a situation? Women's leadership versus the average leader?
Absolutely. I think women tend to not realize that the world of work is a dirty place and that it is a place where not rugby is played, but very often thugby is played, and that there is a game that's played that's called politics, and it's not necessarily a dirty game, because if one wants to make things better, and women are idealistic and they want to make things better, but what they don't realize is that if the game is thugby, you can't go onto the field and play netball because you'll be shown off and you'll be injured. So what they actually need to realize is that they cannot not play. They have to learn the art of politics, which is simply power in action, which is the art of influence. And if you want to make things better, you don't have much control, but you need to influence your area of concern. So you need to learn the skills and the tactics and the strategies of politics. And rule number 1 is you can't play. Rule number 2 is you've got to be the best player on the field. And rule number 3 is that's how you make things better, but you better be an artist at the art of influence.
Nike, the playing field is definitely not equal. So going back to the first question I asked around having institutions crafting policies to make sure that women are in positions of power, we've often heard of affirmative action. Do you think that this is the right way in order to get women to be in those positions, or has it come back to bite us?
It's difficult to say. If I understand what you asked, in terms of how can we level the playing field between the participation of women in politics and what we have in terms of male participation. I think some of the ways that have been put forward is things like having quota systems in terms of ensuring that there's a particular number of positions or particular size that is retained for women. What I believe that is the way to start with, but however, that is not the end. Because by a system, for instance, of quota in itself is a limiting factor, because that means you're also creating a glass ceiling that even if you have more women who are better able and fit to do more than that, you've already limited them to a certain number of size. So what I would actually like to see is more of an empowerment given to women in order to help them develop their leadership capabilities, in order to help them, to let them grow, to help them know how to network. Guys do this very well, and we need fellow women who have actually risen to the top to actually rise up to the challenge and help to mentor other women that are coming up. We don't have enough critical mass of women at top level. And I think by the time we begin to have significant participation of other women at the top level, we'll be able to have that stronger voice which pulls more women into that cycle.
Paying it forward, Renate, that is one thing that I think Nikkei was alluding to. You are very heavily involved in mentorship and leadership in women. What have you seen that can be done in order to ensure that we get the next generation of women right there?
First of all, I'd like to address the myth that we pull each other down. And I really value this opportunity of speaking to women, because who stands to gain by women pulling each other down? It's men. So it can be seen as a political strategy, and women really need to realize this. We have nothing to gain by pulling each other down. So paying it forward is critical. And it's one of the ethoses that we have in our company, in our strategic leadership program. The women who go out are mentored, first of all, by their lecturers and by their faculty at no cost. They can then come to ourselves, or they can go to a selected coach thereafter and have a contract with that selected coach who assists them, whether it is financially. And I'm sad to say that very, very top women who are leaders and earn a fortune tend to spend their money on fashion and invest poorly, and I do think this is an area that needs to be addressed very, very seriously. And I've had the sad experience of women investors admitting that they are not sorted out for retirement. So I think the areas of mentorship are, number one, to be politically astute. Number two, to be able to negotiate. There still exists a huge wage discrepancy between men and women, simply because men are prepared to ask for what they want, and they understand negotiation tactics, like ask for 35% more, because you're not going to get exactly what you ask for. And sadly, women very often say, oh, I didn't realize that. So it's a matter of basic tactics. Women negotiate very differently to men. Women like small talk a little bit up front. Men don't. One should never tackle a man's ego, for example. One should let him go first. One must respect the male role. They're just simple tactics that make the interaction between men and women more respectful. And with respect to coaching and mentorship, I think all that young women need to do is they need to target women that they respect in their world of work and say, may I have half an hour or an hour of your time once a month? They should also negotiate, there's the trick again, as part of their development package, that they should have a coach outside of the company that they can speak to confidentially, that they don't need to watch their P's and Q's, that they can actually strategize their career with somebody outside of the company.
Renate, we're going to come back to that point of mentorship, because that's clearly coming through very strongly. We're going to a quick break, but we'll have more of the role of women in shaping the African continent when we come back. Welcome back to Invest Africa. Still in studio are Dr. Renate Volpe, Chief Executive at Dr. R. Volpe Leadership Consulting. And coming to us once again from Lagos is Renate James, Partner at Tax, Regulatory and People Services at KPMG. Before we went on to break, Renate, I just want to pick up with you again, talking about mentorship, being able to negotiate, that this is something that should be in a package. Are we seeing this change? Are we seeing corporates maybe trying to make that a part of something to attract women into the organizations?
With regard to coaching and mentoring, they are becoming popular terminology. But what is seen is that very often men, if they come for coaching to myself or to my faculty, their coaching is paid for by the company. Whereas women will come for a cup of coffee, and then you will say to them, would you like to continue? And they'll say yes, but I don't have the money. But they've arrived in a big Merc with beautiful leather boots. And then they need to be coached into negotiating a coaching contract for themselves because they deserve it. And really what I would like to say and endorse what our previous speaker has said, underneath all these skills that I have mentioned, women suffer from damaged self-esteem. They are still givers, they still want to be needed, and they still have damaged self-confidence. And that is really the Achilles heel with regard to women. We think we're empowered, but we're actually not, because now many of us are breadwinners. Our husbands have to adjust to that role, which is not always easy. We're mothers, we're models, we're sex partners, and we're ambitious women. And one has to question whether that is empowering or whether that is difficult. So we need to become thinking women, and we need to develop pride and self-regard and confidence. But the mixed messages we get from society in terms of chauvinism and paternalism, and traditional and customary, those beliefs go very, very deep. And it takes quite a trusting atmosphere for women to discuss those amongst themselves and to realize that we are not as liberated as we think we are. And recently I've just done a lot of research with regard to the masculine and feminine population, not male and female. And women fall very squarely into something called codependence, which is where they give more than they have to give and become fatigued and exhausted and burnt out and depressed, which is a phenomena you'll see with working women. Whereas men fall more squarely into the narcissistic population. And that is what the corporate world is about. You'll hear topics about CEOs being psychopaths or snakes in suits, and that's not a natural profile for most women. So we have to understand these two worlds, and men need to learn more about the feminine energies, and ladies need to learn more about the masculine energies so that we can encounter each other in not a controversial way, but in a balanced and respectful manner.
You mentioned natural profile. Nikkei, let me come to you. Let's talk about some of those trailblazers, those women that are breaking the mold. We spoke about women at board level and their representation there. Have you seen any movement in particular sectors where we are seeing sectors that were predominantly male dominated and now more women coming to the fore there?
Traditionally, for instance, when you look at the sectors that you have, the sectors you normally find women participation tend to be those who are closer to educational, or those who are closer to vocational kind of arrangements. You hardly find women going into sectors that are the hard sciences or even the top level of social sciences. But in today's world, when you take a statistics of women, you find a greater percentage of them showing up in the financial services. By some of the data I was looking through, for instance, if I take a case like Nigeria, my country, you find that in the financial services, you have up to 50% of the total workforce being made up of women. And then when you go to top management women, they are close to 30% of the total top management you have in that sector. And as you move away from there and you look at other, professional core science or core professional areas like law, you find a lot of women involvement in it. And that says a lot, that speaks a lot in Africa, first of all, to the kind of attention government has paid over time to the education of women. that has been a key factor in ensuring that a lot more women, not only are they educated, but they're able to go into the workforce. I think where we have the issue with women right now is not so much as their entrance into the workforce, but being able to stay the length of their career and actually grow up to leadership roles. There's still a dearth of women at the top level of leadership roles. Just staying with the financial services, if I just take a look at that industry, at the CEO level, we only have 2 women as CEOs in all the banks that we have around, which is in excess of all the banks and financial institutions that are in excess of like 50. Only about 2 of them are made up of women CEOs. And that tells you that there's still a lot of problems that prevent women from getting to that top. And the question is, how can we break that barrier? That appears to be the last frontier for women that they need to break in order to be able to get to the very height of their career. I remember the book written by this global women leader, Sheryl Sandberg, who is the CEO of Facebook, and she wrote in her book, Leaning In, that the men still dominate the world. But in reality, there are a lot of women who have the ability to lead. And question is, how do we pull these women up so that they can get to those leadership roles? I think that's where the challenge is.
Renate, I saw you nodding in agreement with Nikki when she said that there's a problem with getting women to stay for the length of their careers, and there are certain barriers that are in place there. You clearly have thoughts on that.
I think 2 of the prime competencies are networking and branding, and then I want to talk about women's emotional world. Getting to the top is knowing who's who, whether we like it or not. So it's not a case of working harder and waiting to be seen. It's a case of getting out there and strutting your brand. You see, we have a confusion in ourselves in terms of humility and boasting. The reality is, if we don't go out there and tell people what we can do well with humility, then they won't know what work to send us or what to count on us for. So we really need to get out there and tell people what it is we can do. Very often women confuse a brand with, I have heard women say, I'm beautiful, and I'm pretty, and I'm good, and I'm a hard worker, and I'm a fixer. Those are brands that go with lower level management. The brands that go with higher level management are, I'm a visionary, I'm a trendsetter, I'm a strategist, I'm an innovator, I can contribute to your company's sustainability. Women need to speak the language that is required at top levels. And if you just think about any time you lobby for a decision, if you know people who know people, you don't have to be on the side of right to have the decision swung your way. Mm-hmm. So women need to confront the belief that it's more than being good and being competent. It is about being that and knowing people so that you can swing things to make the world a better place for all of us.
Well, ladies, it is going to be Women's Month, and this is going to be a conversation that we'll continue on having. But from what we're hearing, education definitely is key, and women should not be apologetic for who they are. They need to have better negotiating skills, and this can help level that playing field. Thank you so much to Dr. Renate Volpe. She's the Chief Executive at Dr. R. Volpe Leadership Consulting, and coming to us from Lagos, Nikki James, a partner, tax regulatory and people services at KPMG. Of course, if you'd like to take this conversation further, we can use the hashtag InvestAfrica. Well, from the team and myself, have a great day.